My name is Chris Coe, and I have had the pleasure of serving on the Board of Servant Leaders for the last 5 years. Now, I think it's coming up on 6. So we've been at Mission, my wife and I and our family, my beautiful bride right here, Robin, for about 14 years. So yeah, right as this building was eventually bursting at the seams and going to the new one, that's kind of when we started. And I think some of you are here, including Kevin was during here at that time period as well. Before I get going, do you mind if I pray? I hope you don't mind. I've had a long day, and honestly, I'm like, I need the Holy Spirit to just envelop me. That'd be great. All right. Heavenly Father God, thank you so much, first and foremost, for who you are, and that the fact that we can come before you and present anything because you care about us as your children. Thank you for this church that you've allowed us to be a part of and the story you're writing through it. It is incredible to be able to see the transformation that is happening as your Spirit moves. And God, I pray tonight as we're gathered here together, united, that the words and the things that are being spoken and that everything that is resonating here, that we'd be focused on what you're doing, God. So we love you, Lord, and thank you for this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so this is going to be like the most anticlimactic speech I'm going to give you guys right now. I run a company, and so I give a lot of talks at times, and I'm like, you always want to like save the, all right, here we go, we're building this up. It's not, we're going to build it. So just so you know, we haven't hired a new lead pastor, and we're not announcing that tonight. So anybody want to leave? Nick was going to use this joke. Go ahead. The doors are wide open. We're not. So we're not announcing it, but we are going to announce some different things here. We are actually talking about, and we're actually implemented a new type of leadership model, and that's what we're going to discuss to you. But before I get there, I'll go over some things on the timeline of that. However, I did want to say a few things before I kind of get to that timeline. So first of all, I wanted you guys to know that as a board of servant leaders, we have been wrestling with a lot of things from the time in which Joel announced his resignation. And one of those things is really, what is God doing in a way that is specific to Mission Community Church that makes it unique here in the East Valley? That really is something that has I think moving us forward in a new direction, and how are we going to best align the church and the way it operates to that and make sure that is where we're going to be set up in the future. So I'll get to that in a second. But here's the reality. We started this whole process going to do with Joel, and we had a way in which we were thinking about this new leadership model as this process was going, but didn't have the ability to kind of get there right away. So I'll help you understand that in through the timeline here as well. So Todd calls this new model, and he's going to use this here in a second. He uses the Slingshot Group. It's called the Mesa Leadership Model. We call it a shared leadership model. And what that means is, instead of having one singular lead pastor to rule the entire deal here, is ultimately going to have two, or at least a shared leadership level of a lead executive pastor and a lead teaching pastor. Okay, so how does that play out? How does that roll? So what it looks like is a lead teaching pastor and a team is going to focus on what's being presented on stage on a weekly basis, the content, as well as vision, execution, and direction. And then the lead executive pastor is responsible primarily for the staff as well as the execution and operations of the actual church itself. Together, they have some combined responsibilities as well. So then they have their own individual responsibilities. So it's not as if they're like working in silos at all. They will both then report to the board of directors. Right now, many of you may or may not know, but that at this point in time, we have a singular direct report. Basically, that it would be the lead pastor, and that was Joel previously. And so now we're going to have it 2 direct reports, and again, they'll have their 2 separate roles and giftings. The reason for this, there's a few different ones, and Todd's going to talk about some of the benefits, and so as well as with Steve, but this is basically a model in which that will allow the giftings typically of the individual on a lead pastor that's really dynamic and great and teach on stage tends to not be a great day-to-day manager. It's surprisingly, the creative mindset and the communication, usually it doesn't always work out to the day-to-day details and execution and stuff like that. So we're really trying to play to these roles' strengths. Now, all that to be said, I'm sure you're going to say right off the bat, like, how is this going to work? Usually having two people at the top, that doesn't tend to work. Well, you're absolutely right. That is a potential struggle that might happen. Ultimately, we believe the benefits of this model far exceed the potential struggles. So, and we'll kind of get to all the details around that, of how that looks like. But at the end of the day, if we're being honest with ourselves and being honest with where the church stands overall, there's problems when you put one singular person at the head that's not Jesus Christ. And that is a difficult thing to overcome. I don't care who you are or how godly you are, a singular man is really difficult to carry that weight. It's not just your giftings, it's also a massive weight. And therefore, we don't want a singular person to feel that constantly. It is a mass pressure that you feel every single week, because you're not just there as a pastor, you're there as a team leader, you're there as a minister, and then you're still playing the same roles as a father, a husband, and all of those things all at once, and it is a lot to carry for one person. So we believe this model is going to potentially. So how do we get there? First of all, I want to go through the timeline, and normally in PowerPoint, apparently you could have these fly in like I normally do, but we have Presentation Pro, some fancy deal that can't do that, so I told them I'd throw them under the bus, so anyways, so you just get to see it all, but imagine like we're going in one step to there. Imagine you don't see anything right at it. Okay, so 2014, who was here then? All right. You guys have some scars too? All right, sweet. Yeah, so if that was with Mark Conley, and if you guys don't remember, Mark unfortunately had to resign due to a moral failure. And so what happened is we went and took about a year, the board did at the time, to search for a new lead pastor. Now, at that time, they did consider potentially moving to this shared leadership model. However, unfortunately, given the circumstances and going from 7,000 plus people to start to see that continue to degrade rapidly, it was like, well, let's not move entirely to a new thing. Let's not rock the boat too much. So let's move towards hiring Joel. And that's what they did. And it was great. Like, honestly, God brought Joel to us. We are absolutely thankful for the healing that he brought to our church. I hope you guys can agree with that. So Joel hey, there we go. All right. Yeah. So in 2015, we hired Joel, and then 2017, 2018, we moved to, and I know this is a lot of details, just bear with me. It's kind of bit into the weeds a little bit, but I believe that you guys are here because you want to hear more and we want to be as transparent as possible. So just bear with me. It's a little bit of the technical sides of things. The board at the time did not operate on what we have a new model now. It's called a governance model, okay? So the way the board operates now is that we have that singular one report, and at the same time, we work in what's called policies and limitations. So instead of actually saying, hey, church staff, you got to do this, you got to do that, and this is what we're dealing with copier leases and, raises and we're vacation. No, we're not doing any of that. So we purely operate and say, hey, these are the guardrails that you need to operate in, and you just got to execute well on that. So that's kind of how it works. We have a set schedule throughout the year of all of our policies and all of our limitations, what we need to do in order to update those and get the metrics around that and so on. All right. So we implemented that, and then at the same time, we tried to alleviate some of that pressure from Joel and gave those responsibilities of all kind of staff and have only one direct report, and that was, at the time, we had Kevin be placed in that kind of executive pastor role. So Kevin then was operating and running the church, and Joel was who we reported to, and that was Joel's only direct report was Kevin. So instead of Joel at time having 5 or 6 direct reports, it was just Kevin. So that transition already happened in 2017 and 2018. So I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but that is an important distinction because we've been operating kind of under that model for the last 4 years. Okay, fast forward here to August 21, right? Joel resigns, and we're on the path for searching for a lead pastor. Now, when we did that, right, at the same time, we were evaluating this new leadership model. However, again, we were similar boat that the previous board was in, like, man, I don't know if we can move to that right now. So let's move forward on looking for a new lead pastor and let God lead the way and see what he says to us and how this works. And if it happens, it happens, and he'll make a way for it. So what eventually happened is we had hundreds of candidates. Well, actually, us to over 100 candidates. They're going to correct me later on this one. I think there's fact checkers back there, right? Jet's already going live on CNN. I'm tired. I'm sorry. So what ends up happening, right? We go through the entire process. We get down to the final 4 candidates, and these were highly qualified individuals. Like, they were phenomenal. We all, as a board, agreed that we had gotten to the best ones, and we finally bring them this. We went through 4 stages of this process. And for those of you that were a part of those advisory committee, as well as the reviews, like the literally sermon reviews, thank you so much for the time you put in. I mean, we're talking about hours and hours, like Dennis and Rolf, and there's so many people that just did. It was amazing. Thank you for that. And then as we kind of got through this, we're down to these, and we all met after we got the in-person interviews with them. And at that moment, like, I just want to pause. That was God moved through all of us, including Kevin and the staff. It was finally at this culmination point where we're like, we have to make a decision here. And I don't think any 4 of these ones are the right person. And that was hard because we were so close to the finish line. We're talking like hiring in like already now, like this could have been preaching on Easter. And trust me, like the hours of the boards that have been put into this, I can't tell you, like, all the wives, thank you for lending us your husband. Cause I mean, every one of us have put a ton of time into this process. And so it was heartbreaking, really it was. We're like, how do we follow God when it's not in our timing? How do we follow what he's leading us to when it's probably not going to be super popular? And many of our congregation, not just you folks here in this room, are going to be like, we're going to have to start this process over. No. Well, we are. So I'm going to rip that Band-Aid off, and I'm going to let y'all know. So, all right. What that means for us after kind of we decided to move to this model is that we've now hired a new search team, executive search team, and that is called Slingshot, and that group is phenomenal at hiring and finding the great pastors. They're really good at it. Todd is actually here to speak about that today. But before I introduce him and have him kind of talk about this, I do want to take a moment to reflect and say simply this: we didn't make this decision simply on a whim. You can already see in the timeline, God was working in 2014 on previous board members. They're pointing to something that I believe will set the foundation for this church, not just for this year, 5 years, but 10 years and 20 years, such that we can build potentially a model and a platform that will be able to reach multiple generations and have a place that we continue to be united together, that isn't singularly dependent on who is on stage, but rather who sits on the throne. And that we would continue in this church, as we've already mentioned over and over again, to live out what God's doing here. This church is God's bride. It is a place that every single day, whether you like it or not, whether it is there, this is his place. It's not ours. And we get an opportunity to be able to be part of that and be a part of that story that he's writing through this church. And I hope you guys are with us in that, and I hope that you know that we as a board are excited for this, like beyond excited, because we believe that through this model, not only we would be able to continue to be able to grow the momentum that we've already had, but to be able to actually bring and introduce more and more people to Jesus, because it is about what the community of Mission Community Church is, far more than it is about what's happening always on a Sunday stage. Okay? Hopefully you guys are with me with that. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to bring up Todd, and he's here with Slingshot. And he's going to tell us a little bit about the new kind of Mesa, as he calls it, the Mesa model. And at the same time, he's going to talk about their search process at the end. So please give a warm welcome here to Todd.
Thanks, Chris. Good to see you, Mission. Are we good? We're good. That's a lot, right? I mean, that's a lot to think about. That's a lot to digest, for sure. But here's what you got to know. Gosh, I get to be with lots of churches. I get to be with hundreds of churches every year. And to have a church and a board and a team that is so transparent and open about, hey, like, here's where we are, here's where we're headed, that just doesn't always happen. A lot of times things are just made and you learn about it a year or 6 or 12 months or 12 years later. So way to go to this team. And as I've gotten to know the team even more the last few months, it's been really, really inspiring. Now, I was here in the Valley back in 2015, if you remember the chart, and in between some of that time before Joel came, I preached for you guys a few times. So you may remember like maybe 3 times, something like that. As I came back onto campus today, I thought back through, I was journaling some this morning, I was thinking back through, I talked about Gideon some, I talked about Abraham and his son, Isaac, and so I have fond, it's been 7 years ago, and a lot of other messages since, but I can remember exactly how that room feels, the people, your kindness, and just God's special anointing on this place. So I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be a part of this season that you're stepping into. And I want to share just a little bit with you about this distributed leadership model, this Mesa model, if you will. The reason I call it the Mesa model is because you look all around, Phoenix area, Arizona, there's all the flat mesas, where the top of the leadership is more flat than it is peak, right? With one person at the top would be more peak, and then a mesa would be a little bit more flat. So I'm going to share a lot of information with you over about the next 8 or 10 minutes, and maybe the best thing to do would just be to take a picture of some of these slides, because you won't remember all of this. And we're going to have a Q&A in a little bit too, so you can ask any of these questions as well. But the first slide up there about the Mesa Leadership is that this is a model that, again, is not just that peak one person, as Chris described really, really well, but it now focuses more on a team than a single individual. So your board will now have essentially a couple of different direct reports instead of just one direct report. And this does all kinds of exciting things for an organization and a church. It's not like maybe some of you are from the marketplace or the business world where you're thinking, well, that's the flat leadership and no one's in charge. No, that's not it at all. These people are very much in their lane, in their expertise, in their giftedness. They are very much leading and in charge of those areas, but then also still overseen and given guardrails and guidelines and wisdom and policies by your board. And so that's the direction that this is heading. Now, a couple of things on this. On next slide, Mesa Leadership. Why it's coming, okay? Why is this coming here? Why is this happening, in fact, in churches all across the country these days? Here's 3 things to think about. The first one is that because of the complexity and the scope of the local church, this place to have one person come in and with millions of dollars of budget, millions of dollars in buildings, dozens and dozens and dozens of staff, and to have them do all of those things, the scope and complexity for somebody to come in, hit the ground running, and just be able to do this is very, very, very challenging. For them to do that and also have a life. Really, the lead seat that your senior leaders set in is so rigorous. It is unrelenting. They go to bed with it and they wake up with it. Until you have sat in that senior seat of a church, that is different than a marketplace in a lot of different ways, it never goes away for them. Ever. And the scope and complexity of one person doing that is just incredibly challenging. A second reason why this is happening at a lot of churches all around the country is because the next generation of leaders, the younger folks who are coming up, are just more collaborative. They don't have to necessarily or want to even be that peak one person. And it's nothing against, I'm 52 years old. I'm a little bit more in that peak model, okay, I'm going to be the guy. And not to do too broad of a brushstroke, but a lot of leaders 40 and down, especially as you get to 30 and down, a lot of them are thinking, man, I'd love to be involved in a model that we could all be in our giftedness, all be in our lane, all be using the gifts and talents that God gave us and collaborating and doing it together. And so listen, whether we like it or not, it's coming because the next generation of leaders in our country is just a more collaborative crew. So that's another reason. And then finally, the reason is because our senior leaders need to be able to participate in the life they are preaching. Part of my burden is so many times in a church like Mission or other places around the country, places that I've been a part of in leading, even in this valley, we talk about how we want, every single person to have this vibrant, Christian life, and you have time with your spouse, and you have a date night together with your spouse, and then you have date time with your kids, and, at work, obviously your work, is your place, to, be Jesus, hands and feet to them, and then you got to get to know your neighbors too, so we want you to know all the 6 neighbors around you, so you got all their pets, you need to know all the pets, which I see the pet over there, which is amazing, by the way. So you got to know all their pets, you got to know everything, and so what happens is we put together this beautiful life that we want everybody at Mission to live. And then so oftentimes the senior leadership of the church is so weighted down and burdened with so many things, they cannot possibly participate in the life they're preaching. And if you read behind the scenes, this is some of what has been experienced in places like this and other places. It's good people who just get really, really heavy and weighted down trying to do it all. And it's not sustainable potentially into the future. So those are a few of the reasons that this is coming. Here's a few principles of the Mesa Leadership distributed leadership model. Next slide. You might want to just take a picture of this. I feel like you're taking pictures of me, which feels pretty cool. Actually, it's like you're going to post these. Okay, I'm Todd_Clark, Instagram. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that, please. So here's some of the things about it. It's built on principles more than a personality. Right? We fall in love with this place because of what we do and who we are, not just who's preaching. All of the preaching here, from my recollection, and I know the preaching that's coming and has been here, it's all awesome. It's going to be great. Whoever is preaching and leading is going to be top shelf. But we love our principles and who we are even more than the personality, right? It rises and falls on trust. When you get to when there's not just one person at the peak of the organizational leadership chart, right? But you have two. There's 2 people there, it rises and falls on trust, right? That is the special sauce. These 2 senior leaders, and I'm going to be able to be a part of helping to, find some of these people and help develop some of this with your team. It's not that they don't ever disagree, because they will disagree. But it's that they trust each other and love each other. And someone comes up to one of them and says, hey, by the way, Todd, somebody was saying this about you. You know what? I know they wouldn't have said that because we're on the same page. We have incredible trust with each other, okay? Another thing, we've already kind of talked about this, it disperses the weight carried by a single leader and provides dexterity for a team in transition. I hope there's not a lot more transition coming for a place like Mission, but here's the truth. There's transition is part of life, change is part of life, and if it should happen again someday, 500 years in the future here, if you have 2 or 3 people on the top layer of your leadership, losing 1 and keeping 2 adds just some dexterity and some confidence to the organization because we're not losing that one personality and, oh my gosh, what do we do? No, we still have our team intact, bro. We still have our principles. We are still exactly who we were last week, and we just need to find another person to play that very key spot in our leadership model. The best idea wins. Best idea wins. So this is going to be, instead of one person being, Moses and going to the mountain and bringing back, everything for everybody, this is going to be a more collaborative and, hey, what's this and what's this, and piggybacking on each other's ideas. And in this kind of environment, a lot of great ideas, a lot of creativity happens when the best idea wins. It embraces the biggest fan mindset. These leaders are always going to have to be pointing to each other, kind of like Jesus did with his disciples, right? He was also pointing to them, putting them out there, pushing them into the spotlight. It's a very collaborative model like that. And then lastly, it has clearly defined roles and leadership lanes. So probably one of your questions is how will this work? And Chris mentioned it, was this going to work with two people? And absolutely. But they have to have these clearly defined roles and lanes. They have to have their sandbox, if you will. There's a lot of sand in Phoenix, right? I live in Huntington Beach. So we have a lot of sand and beach and water there. There's just a lot of sand here, which I enjoy, but I wish there was more water. Anyway, so they have to have their own sandbox. They have to have their own sandbox that they know and they understand and they operate in, okay? And so the next slide shows graphically what some of these clearly defined roles and leadership lanes may look like. Got it? Yeah, there it is. This is for some of you who are not into words. This is more of what it could look like. You're like, can you just show me the picture? Because I can get that, Take a picture of that with your eyes and you've got it, right? So this could ebb and flow a little bit. And again, this is so cool to have a place in a church that would, wants everybody to just be on board with who we are and where we are. The circles would be the board of servant leaders, the big circles up there in the top. The two circles there would be the two different, a lead executive pastor and a lead teaching pastor. So instead of having one person try and run the whole deal, and like Chris said, be the expert teacher, be the expert with exec things, be the expert in all that, you break that apart. And again, this is happening all over the country because you have so many tenured senior leaders resigning after 10, 20, 30 years. And it's like, how in the world do you find one person to be the 2.0 of them? So let's break that apart to a senior lead executive, a senior lead teaching. And so you have those two folks who are the direct reports to your board of leader or your board of servant leaders. And then underneath them, you have the rest of the org chart of your executive team, your ministry teams, your lead team here, your other staff members going on down. And so they each have their places, they each have their lanes, and they both report there to the board of servant leaders. So that's some of the background on why churches are moving in this direction. It's coming because the next generation is more collaborative. It's because of the weight and the scope of the local church. And it's so the people we hire and we listen to, teach, and lead, they can also have a great and experience the life that we're wanting to promote to everyone else. And their families and kids can have a sustainable life as well. So that's a lot, I know. That's some of the background, if you will, of this distributed model that Chris was also talking about, and your team is really, really wise at. And I just get to join as that outside person and be alongside of them and help bring some wisdom and guidance in that as well. One other thing I want to step into is the actual search part of this. As Chris mentioned, we are starting over. We are doing this again, and we're going to be smarter and wiser. Do you want me to stop there? No, you need to say something though. Chris, say it.
I feel like I've apologized to you guys, and like the last few times I have to apologize again. I missed like the most important thing I was supposed to say. Anyways, Mark's laughing. So the most important thing I should have said before there. So as Todd goes there, Todd's not looking for two positions. He's only looking for one because you already have our new lead executive pastor. So I lied to you. We did hire one. The thing I didn't lie to you guys, not new to you, it's Kevin Reinheimer. So yeah. So I figure I better jump in here before Todd starts talking about the search process. Anyways, I apologize. Good news is we get to, at the end, pray over Kevin together and commission him. So stay with us at the end. It'll be at the end of the Q&A, okay? Again, sorry about that.
I wasn't going to say anything because I'm like, well, wait a minute. I was here the weekend when Joel was announced. Maybe I should just do it. Maybe I should just say it. Hey, Kevin, come on up. So, no, that's very important. So as we move to this distributed leadership model, Mesa model, and we have 2 people who are direct reports, we're only looking for 1. We have the lead executive. We're looking for the lead teaching pastor person who will be in charge of a lot of that weekend stuff, the teaching, building the team, building the spiritual diet of the church, those sorts of things. Okay, so next slide. Next slide, another graphic. You can take a picture of this if you want to, and I'll go through this very quickly. At Slingshot, we've been around now for, I still feel like you're taking pictures of me. This is so great. Slingshot's been around for 14 years now, and there's 62 people that work for Slingshot Group across all of our different divisions and teams. We're serving about 430 churches right now around the country, so very, very active, very, very busy. I lead our senior team that has 15 people on it, and so my whole team will be working and leading for mission in this. But the way it starts out is we get to know you, we get through a questionnaire, we get some on-site time, we work on a profile of who the church is, who we're looking for, what this job description is specifically, again, for this lead teaching pastor. So they will not have all of the executive duties and all the teaching duties, which will be very attractive to a lot of people, especially a lot of spouses who will be able to have their person with them and with their kids maybe in a more regular basis. And so we put that together, and then when we get that ready, when we feel good about that, meaning the board and the team, then we go live on a national search, and we're very close to that. We basically have the profile. We're still working through just a few things. We'll probably be live on that in the next, 5 or 10 days or something like that. It's pretty close, but that's not my call. That'll be your call as a church when you're ready to do that. And then I'll be ready, and we'll go live, and we will talk to hundreds of people, many hundreds. You say we talk to a few more than 100. We will talk to many hundreds of people for this role. No doubt about it. We'll break it down from 200, 300, 200, 120, and I'm going to end up bringing back to your team the top 5, 6, 7, 8 people around the country who fit who we are as a church, our beliefs, our background for everyone, all of these things, and who really is into a role like this on a shared Mesa leadership model. And then you and your team, not all of you, we're not all going to interview. That would be crazy. But there will be a team that interviews. So they'll interview, and that's in the process phase. And so you'll start getting candidates and start interviewing. And honestly, that can go anywhere from 2 months to 6 months, 7 months. There is a whole lot of Holy Spirit in this. Amen? There better be. We don't move people. God moves people. I don't move anyone. I can help find them. I can help connect you with them. I can help bring awareness to this role, but God moves people. And so it may happen in a month or 2. Probably as quick as it can happen is a few months, but it could be 6 or 8 months. Who knows when God brings that person. But I can tell you this, we will be working very hard and finding people who fit who you are and bringing them to the team and coaching them along the way as they step into these interviews. And then finally, you'll have the last candidate. The board will be presenting that back to the church, and you'll be getting them ready for their first day, and they will be joining Kevin, who has just recently been announced as the Mesa Leadership, distributed leadership model, and then it will be then we'll be cruising from there.